All right. Kari, thank you for sitting down with me. It's a pleasure to meet you. Uh,
Likewise.
yes, ma'am. Look forward to chatting about your experience and your expertise and just hearing all about what makes you tick and what you bring to the world of real estate. You ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. So just to get going, Kari, what do you do better than any other agent? What do you bring that's unique, makes you stand out amongst your peers in the real estate industry?
Well, for one, I'm a little bit different than the norm. Yes, everybody wants to make money for doing a job, right? But for me, it's not, I'm not money driven. For me, the experience is helping somebody achieve a goal. So whether that be buying a house, whether that is selling a house, being able to facilitate that and either get the seller the best money possible or get the buyer into a house, regardless of the situation. For me, it's driven by service, acts of service. So for me to be able to give back to somebody, and to do an educational purchase through the whole thing. So my whole thing is education. So I enjoy helping first-time home buyers. I enjoy helping people who have never relocated to Texas, right? If you want to say Texas is the place that we're relocating to. And it's just a step-by-step handhold process that just tries to make it super, super smooth. So if somebody comes in and tells me, well, I'm pre-approved for 400,000, but I don't want to spend that much. Cool. That's great. Let's get you into what you feel comfortable with, right? Because ultimately, you're the one who's going to live in this house for the next 7 to 10 years. Average is like 5 now, but let's just say for 7, right? And the last thing I want is for somebody to feel like they've been pushed into a house that the real estate agent forced them to get into because they're driven by the amount of commission. That has no bearing for me whatsoever. It's customer service based. It's a relationship business. And I do have lots of lifelong friends and 12 years of doing this that have been very good friends of mine. I keep in contact with on a constant basis.
Yes, ma'am. That's awesome. And as a person who's previously purchased a home, I appreciate that you don't say, "Hey, yeah, buy everything you can get approved for," because that can be quite expensive. And
Very. And the last thing you
I'm
want is to be house poor, right? You still want to be able to go on vacations or buy really nice, shiny things. And if all your money's tied up in a mortgage, you just don't have that freedom and that luxury. So you can always find something in your price range. It's not undoable yet.
yeah, well, yeah. There's a lot going on.
There's
Well, I certainly appreciate that you educate your buyers on that particular point because that's one that I feel really gets overlooked when it comes to what you're pre-approved for versus what you should actually purchase. So thank you. That's a great answer. Kari, briefly describe to me the most challenging real estate experience you've had and how you resolved or overcome that.
Okay, let me think about, I don't remember what I had mentioned before, but I did have several transactions where things have gotten heated. Seller tends to get a little emotional. Seller tends to sometimes not like the buyer who comes in and nitpicks off of an inspection report and various things, right? Sometimes the seller has to sell and they don't want to. But I've had situations facilitated in the past where a new roof needed to be placed because at the time I was working in the Austin metro. I'm now here in San Antonio, but in Austin, particularly up in the Cedar Park area, there's lots of hailstorms. There's lots of hailstorms here in San Antonio, a lot on the far west and Haloti side. So it's kind of like the same if you were to look at a map of 35, go on all the way up. It's everything to the west of 35 in Austin. There was a seller in particular who was getting very antsy about being asked to replace the roof. And we had to go down to the specifics of, we had to line out in the inspection report or in the repairs amendment, it needed a new roof, but we also had to specify that it needed to be the same likeness as what was on there, because the seller was going to go ahead and get his friend to put the new roof on, and it was going to be a 10-year shingle and not a 30-year shingle. It was going to be some atrocious color, right? So my buyer's getting upset because they're feeling like they're being attacked by the seller. The seller's getting upset because the seller feels like they're being, nickeled and dimed in every which direction. So trying to keep a level, calm, and the agent was getting upset too, right? And so it was just being able to just kind of keep everybody down. And I think the one that I mentioned in in the notes had to do with hiring a mover, right? There was a really sticky situation where the seller was just tapped out, couldn't deal with it anymore, right? And we were at the day of closing. My buyer's upset because she's pregnant and needs to be in this house. The seller couldn't move. So I had to negotiate with the other agent. We ended up hiring a moving company and had them come in and move the seller out at my expense, right? Because my buyer's upset, seller's putting their foot down saying, I'm not doing any more than I have to. My people are ready. They've got nowhere to go. Like, what do you have to do? You have to think on your feet. So the first thing that came to mind was, let me hire you a mover. Hired a mover, paid to get them all packed up, got them out of the house. And then the other agent reciprocated by hiring a cleaning company to come in and clean. So the two of us ended up working together, which was great, but it was like very stressful for 2 weeks because the seller wasn't going to move and the buyer was upset. And then attorneys get, thrown out there, right? It's like everything just gets heightened because everybody's emotionally attached to it. But at the end of the day, we ended up saving the transaction. I paid for the movers to come through and move the seller, and everybody ended up going to the closing table. Keys were exchanged, and it's just been great.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to think on your feet, and obviously being able to get the other agent to kind of lean in to make that deal happen. That's a lot of
at the end of the day, the seller wants to sell, the buyer wants to buy, right? And people just get emotionally heated. And so they start attacking, and it's like, okay, all we're doing is running in circles.
Yeah.
Right. You have to it's like herding cats, right? You just have to kind of get them all into a little group and go, okay, how do we get from point A to point B? What is it going to take? And if it means that I have to come out of my pocket, I don't mind. If it means my client gets the house, right? Now, Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go like guns ablaze and spend like $10,000 and things like that, right?
Yeah.
There is a fine line or a happy medium there. But if it's just going to cost a little bit of money to just get the deal done, I don't have any problem doing it if it means that my client ends up getting what they need.
Awesome. Well, I'm certain that client appreciated it. I'm certain that seller appreciated that situation, and good on you for making it happen and being flexible to make it happen. So I'm sure there are plenty of people who are just throwing their hands up and let their temper get the best of them. So that's excellent. It sounds like you went above and beyond in that situation, but is there another time that come to mind when you went above and beyond for a client?
Well, actually, most recently, I just had a deal close 2 week and a half ago. And he is active duty Army. He is PCSing here to San Antonio at one of the joint bases. And he's he's graduated now, but he was currently on special assignment in another state and was buying his first house, had absolutely no idea what to do, didn't even know where to go and get his verification because he's active, so you can't ask him for a DD 214, right? Mm-hmm. So we had to have the lender and I sent him a list of lenders and said, here are the 3 that I've had clients work with. He ran through the list. He ended up picking one of them. And so she and I worked together to educate him on what his options were and where he needed to go to get all of the information. And he was really nervous because he was in another state. He couldn't just fly in and house hunt one weekend because he was out in the field, right? So I made myself available if there was anything that came up. There was a house that came up on the market. And so I said, look, you're not here. You're buying your first house. Let me go and do a video tour. So ran through the neighborhood with the video on my phone, took video and detailed notes through the video on my phone, and then ended up walking the house for him and uploaded that to YouTube and sent it to him. He ended up contracting with it. We got the house. Appraisal came in short. I got the appraisal sales price adjusted down to the appraisal value, and we ended up closing 30 days later. So awesome. He's ecstatic because he's got a brand new baby. He's being PCS to Joint Base San Antonio. He knows nothing about the area. He wants to buy a house, and he's just like, what do I do? So I totally understand, right? I get it. I'm married to a veteran. I was not a veteran's wife at the time, so that was all before me. But I've heard the stories. I've got lots of friends who are active and former military. It's a stressful situation, especially when you get pushed into a completely different state that you have no knowledge of whatsoever. So anything I can do to make that situation, less stressful and as thorough as I can, pointing out, hey, I walked the kitchen, it's missing a dishwasher, right? Like cueing into the certain things. The shower door doesn't shut all the way, but all in all, it's a great house, right?
Yeah.
So giving him everything he needs so he can make an educated decision on whether or not to put in an offer.
Yes, ma'am. That's excellent. No, that's awesome because one, it's great. It's great to hear that you put in that kind of effort. But I can say too, as a former veteran, is that's not an uncommon situation where veterans are coming in from out of state
Yeah.
and don't know the area, maybe even never been there, maybe not know anybody. So knowing
Right.
that you took care of that person and helped make that happen for him and his family, that's excellent. Awesome. Thank you for going above and beyond. It really makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So perfect. Well, Kari, I'm going to wrap up our little interview here. It was excellent speaking with you. I appreciate your time this evening. Let me just hit stop recording.